It is a huge honor today to be podcast interviewing Eric DeVriese, who's a CPA and has decided to only do dentist. And I'm so excited to have you on today because I'm a dentist, and I'm telling you, dentists want to do dentistry. We want to fix broken teeth. We want to get patients out of pain, and nobody went to school to know what you know. Nobody wants to do what you know. And you're actually, I don't know how to say this and be polite, but you're just kind of that necessary evil task of accounting and business and purchasing a practice. And so I want you to do all the talking today because I just ran 10 miles, so I don't even think I have any wind to spare. So you basically, you're in Ormond Beach, Florida, a little beach town in northern Florida. Is that Gulf or Atlantic?
We're on the ocean side.
Okay, the ocean side's. So is that near, what is that near, south of Clearwater or?
Well, actually, we're just north of Daytona Beach.
Oh, Daytona Beach, right on. So you get to see the space shuttle take off.
We used to. Now it's all Elon Musk and the Dragon he's shooting in the air nowadays.
Yeah, twice. I mean, the odds of this are just not even possible, but twice in the last, since 1990, I was lecturing around that area where everybody said, okay, stop. And we all went outside in the parking lot and got to see that thing way down take off. I mean, that is just amazing.
It's a pretty cool experience.
So what do you like to do? What is your key customer? I mean, what kind of dentist do you like to deal with? You like old dentists selling your practice? You like young kids coming out of school? Or are you trying to find the young kid and the old guy and fix them up and do a transaction? What is it you like to do?
Well, number one, we just like to help dentists in general right now. We're convinced. I've got about 9 years of public accounting experience with PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte, and we used to be all things to all people, and it's just really difficult. So we try just to focus on one area and become a subject matter expert in that field. And so we found that dentists really need some business help. No offense, Howard, but some of the deals that I've seen put together in contracts, they really need some extra guidance. So we decided to work with these people. Some of my very close friends are dentists as well. So that kind of helped steer my ship into dentistry. And we helped 2 young dentists buy their first practice. And then once they got in there, they needed help building out all the processes, the technologies, and so on. And we had a lot of fun doing that. And we really did a great job. So we decided to focus on helping the dentist get in the game. There's so many questions, so much out there for buying dental practices. And once we get them their first or second or third dental practice, then we focus in on the processes, where we call it the build phase. But basically, we're very process driven, and we're pretty tech savvy. So we're not in it for everybody. We understand that. That's fine. But we're looking for, I use the word millennial, on the cusp of, because typically that kind of client, if you were to tell them all of your data is going to be live on your iPhone, on your iPad, access to it when you want it, they would tell you, well, of course, why wouldn't it? So it just seems to be a natural fit for that younger generation in our sweet spot.
Well, my favorite Pulitzer Prize winning book of all time, it's a tie between American Medicine, the rise and fall, the rise of the American healthcare industry, and the other one would be Guns, Germs, and Steel. But that Pulitzer Prize 1984 Paul Starr book the whole deal was that in 1900, medicine was 1% of the GDP, and by 2000, it was 14%. No industry ever did something like that. And medicine has 58 specialties, dentist has 9, and I think all the successful CPAs and lawyers that I see, they're just doing a niche market. I mean, there used to be a lawyer would do every kind of law known to man. Now this guy only does patents. This guy only does, whatever. And I tell every dentist that the single smartest move they can do on the business of dentistry is to deal with a CPA that only does dentists. I mean, the old day of calling your CPA and he just got off the phone with a dry cleaner and a Mexican restaurant and a plumber. I mean, that's just not value added. So my hat's off to you. And all the dentists I know that hook up with a CPA that only does dentist, then they finally, you put on your armchair psychologist hat and you show them the numbers and you show the dentist this is what you see in their industry, and they just make far better, faster, easier decisions. So what are you You talk about the 4 key stages for an e-dentist: buy, build, grow, well. Talk about that.
Yeah, and it's funny. You said one of your favorite books was 1984. One of my favorite books was 1985, and that was Michael Gerber, The E-Myth. And basically, I'm sure a lot of people have read that, but it still holds true to this day, where there's the one kind of person that, in that analogy, it was the baker. She baked cakes. In our analogy, it would be the dentist, drilling and filling and doing chairside work. And then they say they want their own shingle, want their own business, and you start to realize there's all these other nuances that go into the business itself. That's where we come in, and we used e-dentist as for a reason, because we subscribe to that theory, and we kind of hold their hand through that. So basically what we do, our mission, another book that I really love is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And so our mission statement is all about the why. Why do we exist? To help dentists, and our mission pretty much is it's all about relationship. So where you're, and another thing we say is we're not your father's CPA. So where CPAs in the past would focus just on maybe tax returns, some consulting once in a while, we really drive relationships. So part of what we do is we meet with the clients and the dentists every month. We're in front of them doing their financials, their non-financials, asking questions. We're available through text, email, phone calls. We really drive that relationship. So the E-Myth there with the dentistry, we are that backbone support, the C-suite, if you would, CEO, CFO, CEO, where the dentist needs to really focus on driving the ship and steering it. We're just his sounding board. You know, it's always going to be his or her decision, but we are in their ear, kind of guiding them through the whole process.
Remember, you always have to refer to a dentist as a she, because if you call a dentist a he, it'll piss off the women. But if you call dentist she, no man has ever complained. I've yet to get an email from a male saying, hey, you call a dentist a woman. So call him, always call him in
50-50 in the industry now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And God, it's just amazing. And it's so hard to get, you know, one of my big complaints on these podcasts is that if I interview a dentist, it's a man. If I interview a woman, it's a dental consultant or a hygienist. And it's just so hard to find, you know, over 50-year-old women dentists, because they're just rare. They're just rare unicorns. When I was a freshman dental school, there was one girl in the senior class. Now the dental schools are half women. So I love your website. I want to go through. Let's go through the 4 things on your website. You know, the first one is build. No, is the first one build?
It's
no.
buy.
Yeah,
it's buy, right? You have to buy something first. And then with that, what we do is it's really difficult.
It's buy, then build, then grow, then wealth. So walk us through the buy, the build.
Yeah. So for buying, it's really set up for a seller's market. You've got, if you want to call it corporate dentistry, group dentistry, what have you, they're very hungry and aggressive in purchasing these existing dental practices. And then you've got the brokers, and the brokers have the relationship with who? The seller, right? I mean, they're the ones that are getting the 10% from the seller. Of course, it's win-win. They want you to sign, but really what we found is the buyer is kind of left out in their own a little bit, where he or she doesn't really know what the process is, how it's supposed to work, the letter of intent, the financing, the scrubbing of the data. We have found that they just take the broker's word for gospel, and you really got to take a step back and realize that that broker has an agenda. They want to close that deal, and they've already committed to the seller that they're going to get X dollar amounts for this firm. And there's a lot of leeway in what I'm saying right there, but I firmly believe as a whole, the buyer is going unprotected. And so that's where we come in. We are accessible for all the phone calls, the hand-holding, the spiritualness, any kind of questions they have. Usually what we found is one phone call, within about 45 to 60 minutes, we can answer 90% of that buyer's questions. And they feel so comfortable that we've explained how the process works. This is what we're going to do. This is what you need. And 95% of the time, they bring us on board to help them with the transition. So the buy package is really a relationship starter. We work through this whole anxiety because it's a big deal. Buying a dental practice is a big deal. So we kind of walk them through that whole very important stage in their life.
So true or false, myth, fact or fiction? Well, I can't buy a dental practice because I have $300,000 of student loans. No one's going to loan me a penny. I got to work at a corporate dentistry dock in the box or go join the Navy for 4 years, and then I'll call you I'll call you in 2020.
Right. It depends. I'm going to say myth because it really depends on who you are. And there's a reason, and there's a place for corporate dentistry. I get it. If you're not the person, right, the whole e-book of dentistry, if you just want to drill and fill and go chairside and have, that type of style of life, that's okay. In fact, I'm going to put a pin in that, and we've got a place for them in the wealth bucket. But the entrepreneurial, the person that went to dental school to build something, to create something, to have a legacy, to just have worth of him or herself. I say that is a myth because number one, for financing. Okay, banks love dentists. I mean, love. 1% default rate. Right? So the banks will finance you. And not getting into all the numbers that go into it, but I can always find a lender to help this kid out. But what's more important is the cash flow. It is all about cash flow. So that's where you really need to not just look at the shiny object, where it's located, or the new equipment, or any of these other types of things. You really got to get down to the cash flow. And once we get that cash flow working, and we can prove
time out, because there's not one person listening to this podcast that knows what cash flow means. Did you say is cash flow, is that a gram-negative facultative anaerobic bacteria that causes an oral infection?
I'm sorry. Yes, you're absolutely right. So basically, it's the money you take home at the end of the day. I guess most docs know about production, right? And they know about collection. And they know that if they're an associate, it's 30, 35, 40% of production is their take home. They know all of that. In fact, that's interesting because typically what will happen, where you said myth, is it impossible for a dentist to get their own, finance their own dental practice? And the problem, they say, is they're so focused on their student debt that they need to look at the cash flow, which is the net. So let me back up on that. You asked me specifically, help me out, Howard. I got derailed there.
Can they get financing?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, so when I'm in these dental schools, and I'm in a dozen of them a year, the kids all believe that if they're going to walk out with $350,000 student loans, no one's going to loan them a dime.
Yeah.
And I know from talking to experts like you that that's just not true. You were saying that dentists only have a 1% default rate, so the banks love them. And you were saying that's because they have good cash flow, and none of these dentists know what cash flow means. And you're talking about it's basically production. So finish off on cash flow. And then also the other thing the students always tell me that, well, wouldn't it be wiser for me to pay off my student loans first before I go buy a practice?
Right, and the trick with that is I say no, because banks love you, right? And they're going to give you a loan at over 10 years, 4.5%. And you look at what you're taking home on that, you're going to get what, 125, 150 if you go to associates. You can pull out 250 if you do your own thing. And we can walk through the numbers, but it's night and day difference. But really what it comes down to is, who are you? Are you an entrepreneur? Or are you somebody that just wants to be a W-2? Once we figure out that you're an entrepreneur, we can figure out the math to find you a practice that will cash flow. And again, cash flow is the doctor benefit, the take home.
Okay, so basically what you're seeing is if I come out of dental school and I go become an associate for somebody else, whether that's an individual dentist or a group practice or a corporate, that they're going to make about 125. And you're saying if they're an entrepreneur and they own their own business, they're going to make 225. Is that about what you're seeing?
Oh, more than that, actually. Well, it just depends on the numbers. Basically, what we do with the when they come through, here's a simple scenario. And on this point, typically the kids think smaller, like they're concerned with that 300,000 student debt. They only want to buy a practice that's about 350 or 400, because in their mind they think that would work. But in theory, again, I use the word cash flow. The very bottom number, when you include debt service, the student loans, and their take home, it doesn't work. They have to go bigger. So what I do is I say, look, what do you produce, right? Like, what's comfortable for you? You know, do you produce 2,500, 3,000 a day? Okay, fine. So let's say you produce 3,000 a day. You produce 3,000 a day. Let's say you take 2 months off. So you're working, 44 weeks a year times 4 days. That's pretty comfortable. 176 days times the 3,000. That's about $528,000 of production. You say $528,000 of production, and usually if on a general practice you want to have a hygiene for a third, that's $176,000. So you told me, young dentist, that you can produce $3,000 a day. You should be looking at something about $700,000 for a practice on a comfortable basis, not the $400,000. So, and on that note, the bankers are going to look at what is that young doc producing as part of their loan payout. If they're producing 2,500 or 3,000, the banks will lend you up to that dollar amount. So don't get hung up on the student debt. It really comes down to your spirit and what you want to do, and we can work out a way.
Yeah, and it all comes back to, they don't know the three basic understandings of accounting. They don't know what a statement of cash flow is. They don't know what they've heard of a statement of income, a P&L, when they're trying to figure their taxes. They know what a balance sheet is, what, if they own a house, what their equity is, what their liabilities is. But they don't understand the cash flow, because the biggest mistake I see is, when they go buy a house, they know that if they buy a $100,000 home and they hold it for a year and sell it, they're selling a $100,000 home. Well, if they buy a $200,000 home, when they go to sell it, they're selling a $200,000 home. And if they go buy a $300,000 home, when they sell it, so that's the way a cash flow is. So they always think they're saving money by buying a very small home. And it's like, well, if you're a Mormon dentist and you have $400,000 student loans, you already have 2 kids walking and 1 in the oven, why did you buy a $100,000 home with a little cash flow? Why didn't you go buy the biggest beast you can get and go buy a huge office for $1 million? And then the other myth is they think, well, they can't buy that big practice and do $1 million a year, if they don't place implants and have a CBCT and a CAD cam and a laser. But most of these $1 million practices, they're $1 million practices because the dentist just does 3 or 4 crowns a day at $1,000 each, takes a rubber impression and sends it to an old-fashioned lab, and just does crowns and fillings and refers out most of their endo, all their implants, all their perio surgeries, all that stuff. Then you can go buy a big $1 million practice by some old fart like me, and they're just doing crowns and fillings and checking 2 hygienists an hour. And so that's why I am just so happy that I get a guest on today like you to tell them the other side. So I want you to do this. You got a bunch of kids listening, and I agree that I believe 50-year-old guys like me do not fully understand how millennials think. I mean, I try, because I have 4 boys, 20, 22, 24, 26, so I try to get it. But I want you to talk to these individual people and try to help them know if they're kind of have the entrepreneurial, like they really would be a good fit for owning their own business, and what the red flags would be like, you really need to be an employee.
Right. You need to be a leader, right? So part of our process is think like a CEO. That's one of our taglines, right? So the Elon Musk, the Stephen Jobs, all these people out there, not to be visionary per se, but you need to be a leader because basically your dental practice is going to be you, right? You're going to be controlling this, and everyone's going to be looking at you. You need to make decisions. You need to have, you need to be a decision maker. You need to be the visionary. You need to have passion. Passion's a big deal. And you got to have desire, right? You have to have passion, desire, want it, be a leader, and then surround yourself with smart people. I mean, those are the secrets to success. So when I say that, does that excite you or freak you out? And that's a very simple test right there. If the fact of leading people or calling the shots or making a decision frightens you, that's going to be difficult. It's going to be really, really difficult. But if any of those, if you are hungry or aggressive, and a lot of dentists that I come into are very much hungry and aggressive. They know it, and usually it's the opposite. I have to kind of talk these guys down. It's like, slow down. You don't know everything. Just hold on a second. Just hear me out. Like, let's just brainstorm and spitball here. And it works out pretty well. But that's it, Howard, in a nutshell. You need to be a visionary, a passion, desire, and want to build something.
And what, when you go into a dental school, what percent of the class do you think is like that?
I feel probably 75%,
Yeah.
and it's not gender-based, not at all.
That's why I think the biggest danger about corporate dentistry out there today is that they're trying to herd cats. They're hiring all these dentists, and deep down inside in their heart, those dentists don't want to be there. No. And that's why I think it's a risky business. What did you think as a dental CPA that when the biggest one, Heartland, wanted some liquidity, that nobody took them public? No American venture capitalists, none it was sold to a Canadian pensions plan. Was that a red flag to you? I mean, if it was a rockin' hot Elon Musk, Stephen Jobs, Apple iPhone business, wouldn't they have just done an IPO?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people smarter than me out there. That's for dang sure, right? So I don't profess to be the smartest person in the room. But what I love is Rick Workman is a genius, by the way. I think he did a phenomenal model.
And my friend.
And gosh.
And the richest man does. He's a billionaire.
Love him or hate him, but you have to respect him.
You have to love him. He's just a good guy.
But I want to take his model on a lower scale. I think the secret to success, and I'm kind of jumping into the wealth, is first you start to buy it. First you buy it, right? And then you build it with all these processes, right? Everything's process driven, all your back office, so that it just becomes not a machine, but the process kind of takes over. And then you grow. You start to either expand locations or you knock down walls and create more ops. And then the whole goal, Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. The end is the wealth. And with wealth, you take yourself out and you start putting associates in. These are these herding cats, like I said, where Rick Workman had, a grand idea. I feel the real wealth is back down at the entrepreneurial doctor, and have him or her have 4 or 5 offices or whatever, and then they can step out and run it like a CEO. That's where I think the real bang is going to be in the future. The Rick Workman's, having a pension plan buy him out. I don't think everybody was on board with it being so big. I get it, the Sam Walton and the Walmarts, but I don't think he had complete buy-in.
The other thing I can't believe is all these older guys that want to sell their practice. Okay, so when you sell your practice, you're going to have to give a big chunk of that, probably 38% to the feds. And then where are you going to put your money when you could have had this, what are you going to buy, a restaurant? You had this dental business with margins unheard of on the S&P 500. The average profit margin, the average on the S&P 500 is 5%. And any idiot dentist can do that. I mean, double that, triple that. If you even take away the cost of the associate employee, I mean, anybody could make 10%. So any dentist could net 10% on a dental office they own that's ran by associate dentists. So you just doubled the S&P 500 average. I don't even know why they. And then when but I want you to address this. Here's what I see. So the dentists like Rick Workman, who have 1,500 offices and is a billionaire. He hasn't fixed a tooth in 20 years. Then you got the other guy, Steve Thorne, who I love and adore, Pacific Dental Services. And his dad was a dentist, and he thought, why the hell should I go to 8 years of college to be a dentist when you can hire one in 8 minutes? Right. And he owns 500 offices. So the E-Myth book that you talked about was talking about that if you spend all your time making hamburgers, fries, and Cokes, you never work on your business. You work in your business and never go anywhere.
You have a job.
And all the people like Ray Kroc, who went from 0 to 20,000 McDonald's before he died, they never spent a day making Big Macs, fries, and Cokes. They worked all day on the business. So talk about the that's where you come in. You're gonna work with this guy on the business. You're not gonna get in there and start mixing it up and doing a root canal with them and helping them pull out a wisdom teeth. So talk about how a dentist should work on the business and not in the business.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's that whole CEO mindset, right? It's a paradigm, right? So I get it. Like you went to dental school, you're excited about practicing and that, but you have this golden goose in front of you that can lay these eggs. And so what you need to do is take care of that goose. You know, Zig Ziglar talks about the cow and how the young girl had this $150,000 car or $150,000 cow, and how would you treat it? You know, you treat it like a machine, you take care of it. Your dental practice is the same thing. Like you need to take care of this dental practice and you need to run it with processes so that you can get removed out and work on your business. You're looking at reports, you're looking at patient care, you're looking at customer service satisfaction, you're looking at phone call acceptance. You're working on your business, right? That's the goal. It's a transition because at first you're excited you're doing chair side, but as you get older, as you get more experience, you need to work through that to set up your processes so that you can work again on your business. Where we come in with that, that's in the build, right? That's that second build phase. And while our number one goal is relationships, we have most CPA firms focus on process and technology and whatever. We have amazing process and technology. And some of the things that we do have, which I can go on, because I think a lot of the young dentists out there would like to know some of the tools that they might just take a peek at. We don't have any proprietary rights over them, so feel free. But we use a software company called Zero, which does all of our accounting. They basically dial into your credit cards and your bank accounts every night, and it's live updates. Everything is live. You swipe a Starbucks card or a gas, it goes right into your accounting software the next morning. We also use something called Receipt Bank, where they just take pictures. They take pictures on their phone for their bills. If they have automated payments through their email, we link that email into Receipt Bank where everything's digital. All their back office is all digital. We use something called Zen Payroll, which is really cool. It's all cloud-based. It's amazing. We use something called Spotlight Reporting, which is all their financial and non-financial data all in one dashboard. So that's how you get these processes in place where you get removed out of it. You don't write paper checks. It's all digital. So that when you come out of it, you've got controls in place that you can do multiple offices without having Betty or Tina or Cindy or Joe involved with that. You know, it's all process driven. And then it becomes more of a, not a machine, but it becomes something that you can step away from and it still exists.
So I want to ask you this. When you get married in the United States, half of the marriages fail. Do you think, because a lot of times, a lot of these kids in dental school, they're saying, well, I'm a woman dentist and I want to have two kids, and my best friend Shirley, she wants to have two kids, and we think we're going to do a partner 50-50. I'm going to work Monday, Tuesday. She's going to work Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on partnerships? Do you think it'd be better to have complete control and be the owner with an associate, or are you seeing partnerships work?
I believe, this is my own opinion, obviously, I believe there's two types of partnerships. Partnerships that have failed and partnerships that will eventually fail. That's my take on
Oh my
partnerships.
God, I
I
love it.
get it. I get
Oh
it.
my
But
God, I love it. That is so funny. Only two types of partnerships: ones that have failed and ones that are going to fail.
yeah, but I mean, that's not for everybody. I get it. But, and that one, that needs process more than anything, right? So, and that's fine. Work-life balance is fine. Like you'll listen to like gurus out there where some of them are all work, 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 open Saturdays for the client base. Some of them are, like the Blatchford is like, no, just work really hard and then take a month off. So it just depends what you want to do. But on that analogy that you just gave me with two women that want to have a real good work-life balance, you really need process, right? So that way everybody understands what's going on, whose roles are what, and then you might be able to do something like it. I would not set that up as a partnership myself. I would probably there's always one dominant, whether it's 51 or 49, there's usually almost always one dominant person. That person owns it, and then you work, backwards from that was what I would say. But I don't like partnerships.
Well, yeah, I don't either. And I tell these women, I said, okay, so that sweater you just bought, after 3 years, you won't even wear it again. Oh, but that partner you married, you're going to still love her in 30 years.
Right.
What? I mean, it's like tattoos. It's like when I see a woman get a tattoo, I'm like, okay, you don't even like your front room furniture after 5 years. You don't even like anything you wear in 5 years, but you're still going to be rocking that tattoo in
Right.
20 years, 30 years. So yeah, I just think you have more options if you say, well, I'm just going to be the 100% owner, and this is going to be an employee. The second follow-up question that's naturally, okay, I just came out of dental school, and I'm a dentist, and I'm going to start my own practice. And my husband, he used to work at Deloitte and Touche or whatever, and he's going to be my office manager, my business front desk. Are you seeing husband wife team? Do you see that as a good thing, or do you see that as a red flag?
No, it just really depends, and a lot of this is all personality driven. It's people skills are so important, and I've got the latest one we just did. She is the dentist, and they've got two kids, and he kind of stays home with the kids, but he kind of does the front. He doesn't do the front desk. He kind of does like the back office stuff, and that's worked out really well. He's like, he comes in maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and it's not ideal for everybody because there's certain management gurus that'll say, no, everybody needs to be treated the same. You know, once you get somebody in there working a little bit, there's going to be resentment, things like that. I get it, but it really depends on personality. So I would not throw up a red flag just for the sake of throwing up a red flag. I do like having the spouse on there for tax planning, which is a whole nother story. I'm not going to get into that for here, but there's a lot of power in having a spouse on the books in some capacity. But to answer your question, I don't see it as a red flag, but I would watch it, and I'd have a conversation to make sure that everybody knew what some of the risks and pitfalls could be.
My take on that is, I think some of the most amazing offices I've ever seen, the wife ran the front or the husband, but it was because the spouse wanted to have that job. They didn't want to be at home. Right. Number two, they wanted that job. Number two, they could get hired at another dental office that day somewhere else. And number three, when they're in the business, the dentist is the general. He's the pope, and they're a cardinal, bishop, priest, monsignor, altar boy. I mean, they get in line. And where it has been a disaster is when I've seen husbands want to be there, love to be there, but don't submissively shut the hell up when the general says, okay, I hear what you're saying, but the answer is no. And they can't handle the no word.
There needs to be a CEO. There needs to be the general in chief.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to basics, though, because I know these docs are sitting there thinking, okay, you said zero accounting. You said receipt bank. You said Zen payroll. Yeah. They're probably thinking, okay, but am I supposed to be on Quicken Online, QuickBooks Pro, accounting? You didn't mention accounting. What accounting software should they be on?
We actually use, it's called Xero. It starts with the X, Xero. I believe it's New Zealand. It's completely cloud-based from the ground up. I've worked with everything. I've worked with Intact.
It was programmed by sheep?
Sheep, yes. Phenomenal sheep. Very bright animals. I didn't know if you knew that, Howard.
New Zealand land sheep, man. That's amazing. What was that movie they filmed down there?
Lord of the Rings, wasn't it?
Oh my God! I lectured down in Auckland. That is the freakiest, prettiest place you've ever seen.
They're good people too in Auckland. They're fun people.
Yeah. So Xero. Okay, so it's Xero accounting.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, why did you do that instead of Quicken?
Yeah, because what we love about them is it's all streaming. It's all based in the cloud. Where Quicken and QuickBook were flat file. Mainframe systems that they kind of cobbled together for an online experience. Really, it's partly the user interface, the UI they call it, but it's just, they even call it beautiful accounting. That's part of their tagline. It's beautiful. So it's just very intuitive, and we kind of hold the hand through the whole process. We only need the dentist to kind of see what we need them to see, but yet every experience that they have with it is easy, it's understandable, it makes sense. So part of it is the user interface, but the real big driver for me with Xero was that the live bank feeds, the credit cards, your bank loans, your debit cards, everything is 24 hours, everything is repeatable, and all has smart logic. So if you went to Starbucks one time and swiped your card in there and you coded it to Meals and Entertainment, the very next time you swipe it, it stays in there, Meals and Entertainment. So we can literally close our books the second day of the month. I mean, and you can't just do that. If most of these dentists are the older docs, I don't know how fast you close your books. We can close books in like 2 days. So that was a real big deal. We're looking at trying to grow this into, a big, we're going to have tons of closes. So we needed something that we could use, that we could do our month-end close really fast.
And I love their website when you go to xero.com. Xero. That's sounded out as zero.
Yeah,
But you
yeah.
know what? What's really neat is they, right on their deal, it says the online accounting software alternative to QuickBooks, and then they got a 2-minute overview.
Hmm.
So is it in the same price range as QuickBooks, or should that not really matter?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I think it's like they have different deals, like 39, and then you can do payroll. There's all these different price points, but yes, it's comparable. But what we do with that, all that licensing, all that software, it's all included, so the doc only sees one price. But yeah, I think it's pretty comparable to QuickBook.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about young dentists. You holding their hand through buying a practice, building a practice, growing wealth. Um, I feel like is that mostly what you like to do, help the young kids, or do you have older clients who say, "Look, I don't want to sell, I don't want to transition, I don't want to associate, I just want you to be my dental CPA."
Right. Routine is a very powerful beast. And what we found with the legacy doctors is that they've kind of just always done it that way. Well, we've always done it this way. And change management is kind of difficult at times. So, and we're not for everybody because we're very focused on tech. Like every accounting software that we use through all the list I gave you, they're all cloud based. So you either got to kind of get it or you don't. And we found that, that sweet spot for us is that, late 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s is like they get it. Like we don't even have to talk about it. Like this is amazing and they love it. The 50s, 60s, they're still kind of timid about the internet a little bit. And this is very stereotypical and I apologize. These are very broad brushes I'm painting with.
Hey, it's
But
Dentistry Uncensored. You can say whatever you want.
well, it's just more of an uphill battle for us, and we love high fives and we love hugs and we love like, oh my God, you guys are amazing. Like we love that, and the 20, 30, 40 year olds that we work with, like they get it, and we just click, and it's amazing experiences versus it's just a different relationship. So I would say the sweet spot is that 20, 30, 40s.
And what if someone's listening to this and wants to talk to you? How do they talk to you?
Yeah, 800-790-5420. That's our main office. Real Time CPAs is our website. You can schedule demos right on our website. Eric
Say,
at
say
real.
Eric,
Uh-huh.
Eric at realtimecpas.com.
Yep, you can do that too. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just Google me. I'm like on. Just
And
do
that's
Eric
Eric
DeVriese.
DeVriese. That's it's Belgium, so it's capital DE, then capital VRIESE. What does
That's
DeVries mean in Belgium? Is it just I assume it's a waffle?
yes. It's a beautiful big waffle.
It's a beautiful big accounting Belgium Lord of the Rings waffle.
Yeah. So the phone number, email, Google me. There's lots of different ways.
And you know why my oldest son is named Eric?
It means king.
Because it was a boy. When I got married, I wanted one little girl named Megan or Erica, and
Okay.
Erica was first, and it had it turned out that it was not a woman, so I didn't know how to
Does
convert Megan to a boy's name, so Erica just turned into be Eric.
does he
So
love his name?
he does love his name, and
Yeah.
I always tell him, I said, you've been letting me down since the instant I first saw you, and
That's great.
he's a great kid. So what do you think of the I want you to address the sky is falling.
Hmm.
I've been doing this 28 years. So when I came out in '87, there was dental capitation instead of sending the insurance claim and then paying 100% for clean exams or 80% for fillings or half for crowns and root canals. They were just going to start sending me $10 a month per person, and I had to assume all the risk, and then that went nowhere. The orthodontists saw Orthodontic Centers of America, and they all believed they were going to be working at Walgreens and McOrthos, and that totally disappeared. So, I've come to the conclusion that whether it's religion or the economy, in stocks, about 10% of all the stock people always think a crash is around the corner and we're all going to die bankrupt. In religion, at least 10% of all my mom's Catholic friends always have the date on when the end of the world is. So some people in dentistry, they just come out and they just have really bad attitudes that this industry is going to hell in a handbasket. How do you see it?
A couple things on that. One, I'm reminded again of Zig Ziglar, where he says the media has accurately depicted 18 of the last two recessions. So take a deep breath, all right? Take a deep
Yeah.
breath, number one. And then let's think about this logically, right? Let's use our brain for a second. Number one, banks are giving you money hand over fist, right? They are lining up. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. They are lining up to give you money. Not the veterinarian, not the ophthalmologist, not the CPAs, unfortunately, either. Dentists. So what do they know that you don't know? Number one. Actually, that'd be number two. And then number three, when interest rates were so low, right, that all this money was sitting on the sidelines, right? Where did it, well, it went a lot of places, but where was one of the big places it went? It went into dentistry. This corporate dentistry just happened, I mean, it's happened before, but this huge push, that tipping point, right? Malcolm Gladwell, the tipping point happened when all this money was sitting on the sidelines and say, where can I get 15 to 20%? Okay. It went to dentistry. All right. So take a deep breath. You've picked a phenomenal career choice. Let's go make some money. So don't worry.
And what I tell these young kids, I said, in healthcare, grandpa can know there's a lump or a bump somewhere and it's been there for 2 years. He knows his stool ain't right. He probably knows he's got high blood pressure. And he doesn't care and he didn't get it checked. But walk up to any woman in America, and walk up to her and say, how much money, cash, do I have to give you to pull your front tooth and you can never replace it the rest of your life? I mean, a homeless girl won't take $1 million for it.
It's
I
true.
mean, they just laugh. They're like, what? I'm like, are you telling me you wouldn't take $1 million in cash for your front tooth and you can't replace it? And girls with no money, trying to get student loans to go to college, trying to, holding 3 jobs, say no. It's like, are you kidding me? You wouldn't take $1 million and you're not bullish on dentistry? I mean, right. Dentistry is the juncture between healthcare and hair, nails, teeth, fashion, Victoria's Secret, supermodel stuff. And these women, I mean, I saw it in the 2008 recession. I saw it where dad would come in and I said, okay, well, that tooth needs a root canal, billet, and crown. And he'd say, screw it, pull it. And then mom comes in and I say, well, we could pull it for, 200. And she's like, are you kidding me?
No,
I mean, it's part of their self-esteem. It's their beauty. Sure. It's their self-respect.
Right.
I mean, you can't get a woman to part with a visible tooth.
And it's funny too, on that same note, I've got one dentist, and I love what he said. He says, I don't compete with other dentists. You know what I compete with? I compete with Cadillacs, trips, and things like that, because my purchase is like, what do you want to do? Do you want to take a trip, or do you want to make yourself beautiful for the rest of your life? Like, so in that point is like, it's borderline recession proof. I mean, there is always going to be a need for good dentists.
I'm going to ask you another specific question about buying a practice. If you got a selling dentist that's got the average dental offices, what's the average supposed to be doing now? $500,000 in revenue, $500,000 in production?
Yeah, it depends,
what
that's fair. That's fair. You see them all over the place, though, right? Because we deal with a lot of brokers, and then what'll happen is, they come to me and it's like, oh, I want to buy this. And you'll see it 1, 2, 300,000, which doesn't cash flow. Again, I'm sorry I use that word, but those don't make sense. I see a lot of 5, 6, and 7s. Yeah, I do. I see 8 through 1.2s. You get to that point, though, like a car dealership where you become insolvent, where you get too big to purchase. But I would say the sweet spot is, 5 to 800,000. Because again, you remember the analogy I used is I always ask the dentist, I said, what do you do right now? What are you comfortable producing? And they take a deep breath and like, well, what do you mean? It's like, not your paycheck. What do you produce on a daily? And then we go through that whole math and figure out, okay, this should be your annual production that you're comfortable with. That should be your driving force on what you want to buy. But I'd say between 5 and 700,000. Yeah, that sounds right.
And is there any rule of thumbs on valuations? I mean, some people think, well, if it collects $700,000 a year, it's worth $700,000 a year. But when you leave the dental world, it's all EBITDA.
Okay.
Where what if you do $700,000 a year and only made $1 profit? And right. They would say, okay, I'll pay you 4 times earnings. They'd only buy that business for $4. So talk about the difference between evaluation in dentistry and EBITDA in all non-dental industries, and how are there any rules of thumb on what a practice is worth? Because you might be talking to some older dentists right now who have a practice, and they're wondering what their practice is actually worth. And then on top of that is a different urban and rural.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of myths and a lot of like what you said, rule of thumbs, and they're fine. But yeah. So the big thing that you hear about is, oh, it should be 65, 70% of production. You'll hear that number thrown around. And who cares? I mean, yes, you care about production to a certain extent, but I'm just going to beat this horse to death. It's cash flow, right? So if you've got 700,000 and your payroll's at 40%, which just happened, and I told him run. So your payroll's at 40%, which is a long story. I'm sorry for even saying that, but 40%, and you get down to overhead of total overhead is like 80%, and you've only got 20% doctor's profit. Who cares that it was 700 if you had that same 700 and payroll was around 21, 22%, and your take home was 40%? They're both the same, but one's giving you 20 cents on the dollar and one's giving you 40 cents on the dollar. That's what matters. That's what you should be focusing on. So for the people that say, a high level mark of 65 cents, on production, I don't really subscribe to that. I'm more down low. I would look at what the net cash flow is. And again, I'll explain that. Call me. I'm sorry for keep saying that word over and over again. But what I found in Florida is right around between 1.5, 2 beach towns, rural. You can get for about 1.5 times your net cash flow. When you get into like Orlando, Miami, you're probably going over 2. You may be 2.25 if it's a highly desirable location. So I would say a rule of thumb: if you can get down to net cash flow, and your broker will give you a report, but you kind of got to normalize it, and there's a lot of things you got to scrub. But yeah, somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5, 2.25, excuse me.
Some of these entrepreneurial dentists, they're in these dental schools, they're reading Inc., Fortune, Forbes, The Economist, and they keep hearing this word EBITDA, EBITA, earnings before interest, tax, and amortization.
Yeah,
and some of these corporate dentistry, they buy on EBITDA. Can you explain to a dentist what EBITDA is? And to detail what is even amortization. What is earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization? What the hell is all that about? Is it a fungal infection that should be treated with nice?
You can get rid of it. You can get rid of it. You want a lot of it, actually. Basically, in a financial statement, you start with productions. You take out your haircut for insurance or whatever, and you get down to net collections. That's cash money coming in the door. That's the good guy. That's the stuff you can tie to your bank statements that the IRS audits. Then you come in with all your outflows, all your bad guys, all your expenses. So usually what we do is we try to keep it very high level so it fits on one page. We do employee costs, which is everything like their salaries, their benefits, their uniforms, their payroll taxes. All of that should be in a range of like 21, 25%. Then we come into your clinicals. Clinical supplies, somewhere around 6%ish, depending. I mean, you've got all the different disciplines, but I'm just very high level here. And then you've got lab fees, and then lab fees, and then what's after that? So then we got lab fees, then we got facilities.
How much should lab fees be?
Lab fees, what is lab fees? Lab fees is what, 7-ish, 7. We try to keep it around 7. So you've got lab fees at 7, and then you've got like your facilities should be at about 7%. That's your rent if you're paying rent, your CAM, or if, utilities and so on.
CAM so that's common area maintenance.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff is in there. So we kind of break it out like that, and then you've got your administrative expenses, I guess. So you add all those expenses, all your bad guys up, and typically for a GP, general practice, you're looking at about 60%. Right?
What should admin be, and what are things that fall under admin?
Admin is legal and accounting, continuing ed, office supplies, expenses, practice development, those kind of things.
And what should
basically everything else.
And what should that be? What kind of range percent?
That should be. I don't have that handy actually. I apologize.
That's okay. But the total
60
is 60%.
Yeah, because what you're trying to get at is we call it doctor's benefit, is about 40%, 45%. This is general practice, they're all a little different, peds and oral and endo. But yeah, so you kind of want to be there. So you take all those expenses, right? So you have your good guys, and then you have your expenses, and then what's left from that, that's basically, in a nutshell, is your earnings before interest. That interest is off your practice loan, okay, your practice loan. Or if you have any other credit card lines, if you're not just using Amex, but if you have a credit card, that's your interest. Taxes is if you're a tax-paying entity. Most of our docs are all LLCs or S Corp, so there is no real tax there. And then depreciation is sunk cost. So when you buy your CBCT or your BioLays or whatever, you have to capitalize that from IRS perspective. They don't let you take that 100 grand all in the first year. You've got to amortize it over the useful life. So we don't really play with that number because it's a fixed cost. So the 60%, the 40% take home is before all these things. Amortization is if you bought the dental practice, the goodwill, the goodwill can be amortized over Section 197 for 15 years. So that's down low here. But you can't control those pieces, right? So it's not fair to put those in your general expenses. So that's why EBITDA, they kind of pull that stuff out. So it's kind of like a true operating net income, if you would. So EBITDA, if you're saying, oh, what's EBITDA? The simplest way to understand EBITDA is it's your operating income. That's the easiest way, I would say.
And what are these corporations? And by the way, when you go to sell a house in America, you got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you might be able to sell it in a day or a week. But if you got a 25,000 square foot mansion because you're an NFL player and you just got transferred, that you might have an illiquid asset. And right. That is one of the reasons corporate dentistry's got so great is because they had massive access to capital. Everybody wanted to throw money at them. But number two, a lot of these older legends who had these offices doing 3 or 4 million, they were illiquid assets. The only person that would come in and write him a check was Rick Workman. And the biggest monster practices I've seen that were sold, whether it was Bruce Baird or the boys out of Atlanta, Goldstein and Salma and what is it, Goldstein, Salma, and but the other one, they Rick Workman offered liquidity. But what are these big corporations paying EBITDA? What's the multiple of EBITDA that you see them paying?
Yeah, they pay more, and that's the problem that we're up against right now. So for my young docs out there, it is somewhat of a seller's market. It really is. And so you've got all these people trying to buy selling doc right now. So you've got the Rick Workmans, so you've got Rick Workman up here, right? You've got Pacific, you've got Heartland, you got all those big guys, okay? But then you've got this extra level of extra layer of this. They've seen the light, like, well, basically what my model. You've got these people that have 4, 5, 6 offices that have a little bit more capital to play with, maybe even some side money getting thrown in there. So they're hungry, they're aggressive. And then you've got the young dentist is like, hey, I just graduated school, I got 2 years under my belt, I want to go, buy a small practice. So you've got all these different people trying to buy selling doctor. So it's a trick, there's a little bit of finesse involved. But you said to EBITDA there, they usually always win if they want it, right? Because they'll come in and they're not trick. Their play is to put a big number. They want to put a big number in front of selling doc, right? And so they come up with this big number up front, but then there's all these contingencies underneath it. Not so much sell back, but there's all these different triggers and targets that have to be accomplished over a period of time. He's not stupid. He didn't get that big being silly. So it's a contract. But the doc sees that big, fat, juicy number. And my guy that comes in, I can't compete with that sometimes. So it really depends who's coming to the table, who with the broker. But I've seen I don't know the number that they have or the formula they have, but I've seen deals taken from us because somebody came in and paid a big number. So,
but when it's all done and said, if that doc just would have stayed there, didn't sell his practice, and just stayed there and worked it and took their regular income, how long would they had to work there to equal what they're getting paid for their dental office, would you say?
Yep, that's fair. And so what that would mean is that's the whole cash flow, that EBITDA, if you would, again. And typically what I said is anywhere between 1.5 to 2.25, and that's pretty much like years. You can equate that to years.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, a big guy comes in, maybe they go 3. Okay, so maybe that's 3 years, and that's a really high side. It's typically closer to 2, I would say.
Yeah, that's why I
And they're
don't get
done.
it.
They have no more golden goose.
I
They don't
know.
have any golden goose.
And then they think they're going to go open up, a restaurant, or they're going to be a condominium
Bed
developer,
and
or
breakfast.
they're going to be a bed and breakfast. I heard that one here in Arizona, a friend of mine in this zip code, this very zip code 8504. I mean, it's delusional. It's like, even if you had a bed and breakfast, you wouldn't sell that for 2 years income. I mean, why
No.
don't you just put on an
And what the
entrepreneur
hell do you
hat?
know about a bed and breakfast?
I know. I
Right?
mean, well, I know a lot about bed and breakfast because I'm fat, lazy, and love to lay in bed and eat bacon sandwiches. But seriously, I mean, I don't see the alternative place of where you'd want to put your money in capital. I mean, you're a dentist. You've been doing this 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and I love working with the kids. I mean, I love going into my office and talking to, these kids, and they're bright-eyed and they're bushy-tailed, and they're, the whole world is their oyster, and it's so lucrative, and you make money, and I don't get it. So you're an amazing guy. Anything else you want to close on? We're at the 55-minute mark. I only get you for 5 minutes now to close. What's your close? I want you to close this. You're talking to thousands of dentists. They're all individuals. Most of them are commuting to work right now, and they're going to get to work in 5 minutes. And I believe that consultants have perfect client customers, and they have rotten customers, just like patients. We have patients we like. Some dentists really want to treat a kid. Some really want to do a root canal. Talk to these dentists of who would be the perfect match to call Eric, the Belgian waffle.
Yeah, you can either be D4 or in 1 or 2 years of associateship, or even a little bit later than that, someone looking to get in the game, to wave the American flag, to be an entrepreneur, somebody that wants the dream, right? They're passionate. They know there's something more. Maybe corporate dentistry got in there, and they went for a year or two, got some production under their belt, and they're realizing that this is not what I want. I want something more. I know there's more out there, but they're not scared, but they just don't understand how it works, how I make it happen. I don't understand the process. That's the person. If he or she could just call me 60 minutes, I'm telling you, 90% of your answers, we can get those all blasted out. It's free of charge. I don't charge. Again, we're all about relationships. So let me help you, because it's all paying it forward. When that person understands the process, then they tell that person the process, because there's more. There's something else out there besides a W-2 working for corporate dentistry. That's my person.
All right, buddy. Well, I think you're an amazing man. I called you. You didn't call me. Thank you for all that you're doing for dentistry. Thanks for obviously you can smell the passion that you have for helping these kids wave the American flag and grow their own business and be a visionary leader. Last overtime question, since I still got another minute out of you. What if this girl's driving to work and she's sitting there thinking, I want to do it. I want to own my own place. I have the vision. But you know what? I don't know if I'm a leader. I mean, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked the line at GM. I mean, is there anything she can read, watch, go to help her be a better leader?
Dental Town, of course, right? I mean, please, seriously. And by the way, thank you for building that. What a great forum for everybody to hang out and express themselves. But yeah, there is. The smartest man or smartest person is the one that knows to surround themselves with people smarter than themselves, or at least in different areas, right? We don't know everything. So you don't have to be the leader visionary per se. You just have to understand to bring in people to help you do what you need to do. So don't feel like you have to go alone. That's your line there. But don't feel like you're in it by yourself. You have so many people that want to help you succeed. And that's no joke. There's so many people that want to help you be a winner. So please rethink that and make it happen. At least investigate.
And I'll give you my, Eric, I'll tell you my version of how I see myself, what I think a leader is. The leader to me is when you go, so long story short, so my mom, I felt sorry for her when I was little because my dad wouldn't go to the opera. She always got season tickets to the symphony, and it was one a month during the school season. It was 9 symphonies a month, and my dad would rather hang himself than go to a symphony. And none of my 5 sisters would go, but I felt sorry for my mom, so I was like, I'll go, and I'd put on my Sunday suit and all that stuff. And but that's kind of where my vision of a businessman took off, because the conductor has it back to all the customers and the patients and and everybody paying money. And the conductor didn't go learn how to play a violin and a cello. He just found the best people out there. And I always thought, watching those 70s on my mother, that's a true businessman. That I don't. If I need the CPA advice, I'm not going to go to CPA school. I'm going to find the best CPA. If I need to find someone to play a piano, I'm not going to take piano lessons. I'm going to find the best pianist. And you just, all I'm doing every day is I'm just a conductor for 55 employees that just knock it all out of the park. My back is to all my patients and customers. And if you don't believe in delegating, Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, is dead, and 40,000 McDonald's don't need him. Sam Walton's dead, and they don't need him. And I'll tell you what, my business does not blink if I'm on a 2-week cruise in the Arctic Circle. I mean, I don't have to be there. In fact, at this point, I don't have to be alive.
Yes, well, you do, number one. But yes, it's all about process, right? And that's the bottom line, is be smart enough to instill process, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like,
yeah, go out there and be a damn conductor and call Eric. He said the call is free. Eric, slowly, what is that number again?
1-800-790-5420.
Okay. Well, Eric, I tell you seriously, dude, I called you. You didn't call me. Thank you so much for spending an hour with me today. I had a blast.
I had a great time. Thank you, Howard.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.